and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we are going to repot a goldfish plant. I get a lot of questions about how to get these guys to bloom. It's a little tricky to get them to bloom. Probably do another video just on their blooming, but one of the things that will help is to keep them repotted on a regular basis. So I have this one here, and you can see it's pretty much outgrown the pot. Well, it may not have outgrown the pot. We'll see in a second when I take out the roots. Like I always say, you need to look at the root mass as well as the above foliage to see the best pot size. I did take out 2 pot sizes that I think could work for this. I'm thinking it's probably going to go more towards this one, but we'll see. It may go into this one. Anyway, this guy here is, as you can see, pretty a little bedraggly, not too bad. It's been growing fairly well, but it did stop flowering a while back, which tells me that it's lacking nutrients, and it was fertilized and still didn't bloom up this spring especially. So that is telling me that it's time to get this plant into some new soil, which I have here already prepared. It's moistened. I do have a repotting series where I go through all of the things you want to do for repotting, from choosing the right pot all the way to repotting. But I also like to do special ones in between for specific plants, so because every plant is a little bit different, so you see some nuances when I do that. So here we go with the goldfish plant. The soil is pretty loose in there, so it's coming out fairly easily out of this pot. Now, we can see here that it is not necessarily what we would call root bound. So that is not an issue here. It's not, if it was root bound, you would see, and I have a video on what root bound and pot bound are. Root bound is where it's got a lot of roots in there. Pot bound is a different thing where the pot is too small. This pot is not necessarily, the one that was in was not too small for it, given the amount of roots. It just needs new potting soil and some attention in that area. So we are going to go ahead and do that right now. And also adding some, as I go, I'm going to add some of my Green Gourmet houseplant food to the mix when I repot. Here's some right here I'm going to add. So that is going to also help. Now, before you repot plants, you want to rub the side a little bit. If this was very root bound, where the roots were circling and circling and circling and circling, then we would want to cut them a little bit. You can also do scores at the side of the root ball, but this doesn't really need that. It just needs a little breaking up. You do this to stimulate the roots to start growing into the new soil. You can also knock off some soil gently, because we do want to get this. One of the problems, the main problem most likely with this plant is it's just in too small, the soil is just done. So that's what we're going to do here. Now, in terms of root mass, I think it's going to be the smaller one. This one is going to be too big. It would be nice if this was a tad bigger, but I don't believe I have any at this point that are a little bit bigger than this, but this will work just fine. What you want to do, as I talk about in my 2/3 root to 1/3 pot soil ratio video, is we want, when I put this in here and I fill this with new soil, I want 2/3 of it to be root and 1/3 of it to be new soil, so that the plant starts growing well and doesn't get root rot. Okay, root rot is one of the most common things that kills plants. So I have some here drywall tape, which I like to use. I have a video on using it instead of screen. It's actually more cost effective in the end. And it comes in rolls. And then what I do is, because the holes are a little bit big, I'll cut a piece and then put it on at a little different angle so the holes become smaller. I'm going to put that in the middle of here. And then I'm going to start adding soil. So this soil here is ProMix BX, my favorite soil. I also sometimes mix my own soil. So I'm going to be doing a video soon on mixing your own potting soil, because that is also a really effective way to have a really good soil, much like this, pretty much this soil, for the most part. There's going to be some things that'll be different, but that way you can make your own soil too. So, because I have a lot of people asking about soil, and the soil is so important to the health of the plant, as we see here with this plant not blooming because of that. I'm adding a little bit of worm compost, extra worm compost, for some extra micronutrients to help this goldfish plant bloom for us. And then, as mentioned, my green gourmet on top here, and I'm going to mix it in a little bit. I had already moistened this soil because you don't want to plant in soil that is too dry, because what happens once you water, the plant will then sink down into the pot and be way too low in the pot. So I mixed it into this area in the center that I'm going to be using. And then I am going to start filling. So we're going to put usually 1 inch to 3 inches max at the bottom of a pot when you're repotting. If you find yourself putting a good foot in the bottom of that pot, it's way too big. Even 8 inches is too much. Now, I put about 3 inches, and that looks to be the right level for this plant. So I'm going to continue to add soil. So remembering, I put a bunch at the bottom already. I'm adding soil on the sides as well. The worm compost is great, and it's very hard to burn your roots or do any damage to your plant with it. So I really love it. It's got like micronutrients that are really good for the plants as well. I have videos on vermicompost, worm compost, basically worm poop, and how great it is. I'll link that, and anything I'm mentioning here I will link. Okay, so still putting soil into the sides of this pot, so you can see, even though the pot looks like, wow, that's just a little pot, it is actually filling up very nicely. When it was in this pot, I would say it was only about there wasn't that much soil. This was definitely not filled with soil. So this pot is a little bit smaller, as you can see, than this one. And this is about almost a pot size up. And that's what they talk about when you'll read plant a pot size up. This is a pot size up. That's why you don't go 5 pot sizes up. And if you've done that and you've had your plant die, it's generally because of root rot. And every once in a while you may get lucky and the plant will grow anyway. Oftentimes it's not going to grow that healthy though, and it will just sit there and do nothing and not grow at all, which is very common too, depending on the plant. And then there's just some plants that just say, I give up. I've got root rot and now I'm going to go bye-bye. Okay. So getting this in here, we want to push nicely, not too crazy pushing, but firmly along the sides to make sure that we fill it in nicely with this soil so that we don't have any air pockets. If there's air pockets, the roots will dry out and then you will have root loss. And that's not good, obviously. All right. Just about, when you put it in, just like with most repotting jobs, you want about 1/4 of an inch around the rim on the inside, so the soil is down 1/4 of an inch. That way when you water, it doesn't overflow all over the place and not get to the roots. So I have that in here. So you could sometimes be a little bit less than 1/4. But for the most part, you want to be right around that 1/4 inch. 1/8 of an inch is not quite enough. So try to make it even all the way across. Okay, now I am done. Now, one thing I haven't done yet that I always forget to bring something to wash these things off with, wipe them off with the dirt. So I'm going to next be doing a video actually on propagating this. So I was looking for some good stems to propagate. And also too, when I repot, when you repot, you want to also take off any stems that are kind of bad or anything, or browning. But this one doesn't really have much of that going on, so it just wasn't blooming for me. So you can see it already looks better, looks happier in this pot. I'm going to go ahead and water it. This is warm water, so warm to lukewarm water, as I always talk about. Important when you water houseplants. And this settles the top of the soil as well. You ideally want to, after repotting, water until water comes out the drainage hole. And that tells you, there we go, and that tells you that it's nice. I think that came out of the drainage hole, unless it came over the side. I'm not sure. It might have come out the side. And once it does that, once it comes out the drainage hole, and I believe it is doing that now, then that tells you, and you can't really overwater at this point. You've already, it's okay to just soak it, let it drain. What you don't, there it is now, it's coming out of the drainage hole. Okay, so that tells me I've soaked the plant really, really well. It's doing great now in terms of water in that new soil. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the correct lighting, which is medium bright light for this plant, and knowing that it has essentially been fertilized by the additions that I put into the soil. Give it some time to acclimate, give it some time to come back basically from being any shock that could have happened during repotting, which will probably be fairly minimal, but it does take a plant a while to start growing again after you repot it. So I will know that it's growing again when I see new growth. Now, of course, this one already had a bunch of new growth, so it's hard to tell. It might be a little harder to tell, but I will keep an eye on that. And you can always take photos of your plants after you repot them and then compare it a few weeks later. That helps too, because then you can definitely spot some new growth as well. And of course, when it flowers, then I will definitely know that it has acclimated, it has adjusted, and it's doing well and doing what I was hoping it would do. Now, in this new soil too, it will likely grow more roots, and then at some point, it could be several months from now, I could go up into this bigger size pot once the plant grows more and the roots grow more too. So there you have it. How to repot a beautiful goldfish plant, and I'm putting a photo here right now of a goldfish plant blooming. I'm not sure which one I have available in terms of, I know I have some orangey ones. Some are red, some are orangey, and I do have a video on how to grow these guys as well. So that's what it looks like. As you can see, pretty plants. So definitely want to do what you can to get it to rebloom, to start blooming again for you, or rebloom, or just bloom. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.